When you're up against a hostile room of people who don't want to be there, you need real strategies that get results. Welcome to From Hostage to Hero, the show that gives you practical advice you can use right now in the courtroom, boardroom, or classroom. Learn how to move your unwilling audience to one that is invested in what you're saying, eager to participate, and engaged in the process. Learn from the attorney whisperer herself, your host, Sari Delamotte.
Well, welcome everybody to another episode of From Hostage to Hero. I am here with Anna Martinez. We're gonna get that right. Anna Martinez, who just won an amazing verdict in a very tough situation. We're so just absolutely thrilled to have her on here and talking with her today. Welcome, Anna. Anna, is that right?
Yes, I tell people I truly and honestly answer to both because my parents call me Anna and all my friends and my sisters call me Anna. And I have this sort of double identity being a Latina lawyer, hearing my, Spanish in my home and my parents saying my name a certain way, but I didn't know that was a thing until people in my professional life. In school, I was always called Anna, but when I became a lawyer, people were just like, Anna or Anna? And I was like, I don't know. Is there one right way? And so when I tell people, it really is both. They get freaked out, but truly and honestly, I do answer to both. My friends call me Anna. Many of them call me Banana. So it is a term of endearment.
Okay, great. I just, having a weird name, I'm very, sensitive to that. In fact, I hated my name so much that I added an H when I was like 13. So I was Shari for a long time. But then, of course, everyone called me Sherry because that's how they were reading it. So that didn't solve anything. And then when I met Kevin, my husband, he was like, what's your name? And I said, Shari. Well, my real name is Sari. And he's like, that's what I'm going to call you. And so that's kind of how I went back in my 30s to Sari. But my parents, every time I complained about my name, they were like, it's pronounced Sari. And I'm like, and no one's going to do that in America. So wrong choice, people. But now I love it, especially with my weird last name after marrying Kevin. So welcome. We are so excited. Let's hear a little bit about you before we jump into the case. So tell us about you as a lawyer, and then how you kind of came to H2H.
So I'm a trial lawyer. I've been a trial lawyer surprisingly my whole career. It's a little accidental. I've been practicing for almost 20 years. It'll be 20 years in May. And
so you started practicing when you were 8, apparently.
Pretty much. Thank you. It's the skincare routine.
Oh my gosh. I need that afterwards. Okay, continue.
Right. And so I am from Colorado. My father is from the San Luis Valley, which is kind of a big deal in Colorado. We have a historically, Latino Hispanic population in the Southwest, as most people know. Being from San Luis, it's kind of like a big deal for people who know that area because it's very hard scrabble people. My mother's from northern New Mexico, also from land grant family. And I, grew up here in Colorado. I went away for school. I went to law school in New Mexico, had plans on staying there, but kind of the world decided to speak for me and I followed. So I got a clerkship in the Colorado Supreme Court with the now deceased Chief Justice Mary Malarkey. And she's the one who really identified something in me I didn't see. So she had really said, it's time for you to figure out what you're going to do. And I want you to stay in Colorado because I was going to go back to New Mexico. And she said, no, you need to stay here. And she got me a bunch of interviews with women-owned firms and women who were trial lawyers. So it just
bless her,
my whole career path because of her.
That's amazing. It's amazing. I used to do a lot of work with a group here in Portland that is really getting women more active in politics and running for office and all of the things. And I remember going to one of their events that says, you can't be what you can't see. So it's so amazing when women who are in those positions of power really reach out and say, listen, you need to also take the mantle. And I just love that story. What's her name? Did you say Mary?
Yes, Chief Justice Mary Malarkey. Yeah, she's passed.
So my Mary has passed too, but I have, a nom is what I called her, a new age mom. And so Mary is a very special name to me. I love that. So tell me a little bit about your practice. So what kinds of cases do you take?
So I went out on my own a few years ago after COVID, and I focus almost primarily on personal injury for a while. The interesting thing about going on your own is people come to you with problems, and I'm like, oh, I know how to solve that. And I started taking just slightly different cases where I could see personal injury elements in them. So this particular case was one that a friend of mine said, hey, I have this weird conflict and I got to get off this case. And she was trying to tell me about it. And I was just like, I can see the personal injury aspect in this. And that's why I took it. But that's really my jam is personal injury. If there's an element of that or some element of, can I correct a wrong for you? Even if it's not profitable, if I can correct the wrong, and would it be fun if it's not profitable?
Right. Well, and this is one of the things that I love about you is that your passion for helping people so shines through. And I noticed that about you immediately when you came into the crew, and you came into the crew like a rocket ship. You were just like, hello, and I have questions and let's get them answered because I'm going to go out there and beat some ass, which you did. So tell me, what brought you to H2H before we get into your case?
So when I left my old firm, I had a lot of good, kind of practical training and experience there. But what was really missing is I felt like I went like 5 years with no good outside, like deep work, like CLE training. And I mean, I love the trial work, but I understand there's also an element of needing mindset, needing something more to get you through it, because it can't just be something that we do over and over the same way. And it's caused a lot of burnout for me. So I spent quite a bit of time I did TLC, Trial Lawyers College. They
College?
had brought a program to Colorado. They did a week-long program in Estes Park that I did. And I think the one thing it gave me was this idea that getting quote unquote, soft skills training, right? Not so much about, like, I already know the law. I already know how this part works. What I need to know is how do I keep my brain in a place where I don't suffer from burnout. And I also don't feel so scared. So that's TLC gave me a taste of that in a different way with psychodrama training. There was a very key piece that was about jury selection. And one of the things they did was put me in front of my, group of mock jurors. And they told me, like, you're standing in front of them. What are the thoughts going through your head? And when I said them, they were really terrible things in my head about my
I
jurors that
love
I didn't
that.
even know. Terrible.
Yeah, I mean, same. Coach Jody talks about that, where she went to Rick Friedman's Ethos, and same thing. It's like, I hate you. You guys are all going to kill me, and I'm going to kill you first, and I don't trust you. Yeah.
Yes, those were all the things. And then they had me sit in the chair and people said it back to me. And I think that's the moment where I was like, I'm doing this totally wrong. And
I love that.
I was
Good
like, somebody,
TLC.
yeah, I mean, I was like, somebody else has to be doing this. And I had heard a podcast, and I think you were on some other person's podcast and they interviewed you. And you had just
Possibly
done,
Michael Cowan.
probably, I think it was, because I do listen to
Yeah.
his podcast. And somebody had just mentioned, like, there was this 12 Year Olds 12 Boys, or whatever book, but then they were like, listen, like, you've got to read this particular book, Hostage to Hero. And I was like, oh, so I got the book. And I was like, this is totally what I need. And then I was like, oh, wait a minute, she has a website. She has a podcast. I need to sign up for this group. And then I was like, I need all these things now, because this is where my heart is. Like, I want to do this work, but I also want to do it in a way where it's more than about trying the case for my clients. It's about really engaging in the community that responded to my subpoena to come to trial. They responded and respected me enough to show up for me. And I want to make it about including everybody. Like, I'm going to just take you as you are, and that's what you're about. And I was like, that is a strong philosophy in our family. My mother is very much that way. She is not trying to change you. She is not trying to make you something you are not. Her whole thing, our whole lives, has been leave people alone and respect people as they are, just period. Like, she's just like, she won't get rid of you. She won't try to isolate you. You could be crazy. It's just, I was like, your philosophy about jurors is very similar and familiar to me. So after reading the book and I read, some of the other stuff you referenced, and then I did the free training you did. And that convinced me, like, I have to join her group. So once I got in,
that.
it just so many more things moved into place for me about what we do and why we do it. And that's the way out of burnout.
Well, a couple of comments on all of that is, one of the things we're hearing a lot from our members is trial can be fun again.
Mhm.
And that this is, like you pointed out, this is so much bigger than just trial skills. I mean, our big secret is come for the trial skills, and then you stay for the community and the mindset. Because nobody thinks they need mindset. I mean, you are self-aware enough that you're like, no, I need that. But I think people are just like, yeah, what's the answer? What's the answer?
Mhm.
And then they've come in and they're like, oh, wait, this is so much bigger. And as Rick Friedman says, trial work is personal work. Right. So you're going to get into, if you want to be really good, you got to get into your own shit, which TLC is so good at with the psychodrama stuff. And so we're dealing with the mindset piece. The second piece that pinged me when you were talking, we were just at TLU a couple months ago, and one of our new members, who I also just interviewed, because he literally was in my seminar. He never heard of me, was in my seminar on Friday, went to trial Monday, and got a $2 million verdict. Just
Yay.
insane. And he's like, I just tried it. I just learned this 2 days ago. But he said, this just resonated with me. This is for me. This is the way that I want to try cases. And that's the thing that we constantly say is there's no necessarily right way. It's just, what's the way that resonates with you? And this obviously resonates with a lot of people, including you. Before we talk about your trial, and this is going to podcast is going to come out later. So, but for you and I, right in this moment, the election just happened.
Right.
And a lot of, particularly women, so I wanted to get your take on this. Women trial lawyers are struggling. I've heard this with I can't trust my jury, actually. Half of
Hmm.
America just told me that women don't matter, that minorities don't matter, that marginalized groups don't matter. And how can I now stand in front of this group and trust them? Maybe I've been naive this whole time. Sorry. What would you say to that?
I hear that. And what I'm hearing also is the fear of
Mm-hmm.
unknown. Like, what is going to happen? How is our jury system going to be affected? How are jurors going to be affected by the kind of clients that we sometimes represent that they may not like?
Mm-hmm.
But I had the odd experience, and I say odd for myself. I have represented people I deeply care about who I found out later are like Trumpers, and I am
Mm-hmm.
not. But I think what I learned from representing these people, I love these people. Like deep down in my heart, I care for them so much, and they cared for me back. It was really difficult for me to have resentment toward them. And I think that's how jurors are. Politics is weird because it does require us to take like a philosophical extreme position about something. And in doing so, what we're trying to do, what's really the motive behind that, is to be included and connected with people. And my thought about this election, I have a million, but my thought kind of looking at all the data and all the things people are saying is I'm like, people don't feel connected. And they feel like there is something happening that they're either being disconnected from people, they're frustrated, and they don't feel like they're seeing themselves. That could be really hard for people, not to see themselves anymore reflected back to you in society because it's changing. How we deal with that, that's the philosophical difference. So what I would tell
Well,
women is don't hold it as if it's an automatic judgment because that's what you're having. What you have to do is make that juror matter to you, that we're not here to talk about any of that. I had my second trial that I just did not win on was the day of the election. And one thing I emphasized to my jurors is how grateful I was. People are doing double duty. You're only called for jury service because you registered to vote in Colorado. That's how you get on the rolls. So I
mm-hmm.
said, everybody here is doing double duty. You have registered to vote. You've probably exercised your right to vote, or you're going to do that today. But you showed up for us today anyways, because that's what really this is all about. We show up for
Mm-hmm.
each other. This is our community. You get to decide these issues. It's not up to people we elect. It's literally up to you. And
I
I
love
strongly
that.
believe
I
that.
love that. I love that because, what I do know is that there are two primary emotions that motivate decisions, and that's fear or love. And so if in fact this election, and I believe it, was decided from a place of fear,
Mhm.
our reaction cannot be responding in fear.
Correct.
I
More
don't
fear.
know what the I don't know what the answer is, but I do know that it's love. I do know that love is the answer. And I think that just like we talk about, you can do focus groups all day long and be like, the
Mhm.
jurors think this. The only jury that really matters is the jury in front of you on that first day of trial. And you have to take them as they are, just like your mom would say, instead of bringing in all of your shit, which I totally understand why we would after what's happened. So thank you
Yeah.
for your thoughts on that. I thought I would just ping on that. All right. Tell us about this case and give us a little overview, and then we'll just dive a little bit into how you overcame some of the issues.
So I got involved after the case had been sort of picked and, had been started by another lawyer that I truly adore, who is a fantastic, what I would call the modern generalist. She's from Louisiana. She's an amazing trial lawyer here in Colorado, Natasha Gutierrez. And she came to me with a case, and I was at first like, I'm just not familiar with this area of law. So we have a construction defect law in Colorado, and it has some harsh things about statute of limitations, how long you have to sue somebody, and then it has caps on certain remedies or damages that you have. So I was just like, I I don't understand the story of what happened here. So she says, listen, she's like, I'm from Louisiana, and if there's anything we understand in Louisiana, it's flooding. And I said, touche, because in Colorado, it is such an extremely odd occurrence in the sense that we don't get a lot of moisture here. So if it does happen, it's something unusual must have happened that you've
Yeah, I think
experienced.
of Colorado as dry. Every time I've been to Denver, I feel like I use more chapstick than ever. And I use a lot of chapstick normally. Yeah.
Yeah, it is very dry. And like the moisture that comes is mostly snow. It's not rain. So I just was like, tell me what happened here. So her sort of thumbnail sketch is I have an elderly couple who buys this home. It's a custom home in this really nice subdivision in a small town north, about an hour north of Denver. It's called Greeley, Colorado. And it's a kind of a urban slash agricultural city because we have a small university there, the University of Northern Colorado. You have they have a vet college there, so it's very agricultural focused. It's not, a city, it's more of a town. So it's got a cool mix of people. It's in a county that I actually really enjoy trying cases in because I feel like the jury pool is very spread. It's like you get a little bit of good mix of urban and rural, good mix of education and age because people can afford homes there. So I feel like if you're going to try a case, it's got to me a pretty good spread of people. So I was like, you already got me sold on where this happened because I do like being in this county. And she says, well, they buy this house, and what happens is there is a terrible, horrible rainstorm that comes in 2021. And when the rain comes, I mean, it is like one of the heaviest rainfalls in about 50 years that they had in the region. And it swells the Thompson River, etc. But the rain comes, and all of a sudden, this torrent of water comes from behind their home. There's a farm behind their home, and it's like a tsunami wave, and it just rushes over, spills into their yard, floods their entire basement in minutes. So about
Wow.
7 feet of water in less than 10 minutes. So very extreme and scary. They're both home at the time. And she's like, this just shouldn't have happened. And I said, yeah, it's a custom home. It's in a beautiful area. The subdivision seems like something happened. So
Mhm.
we both try to understand a little better. Well, tell me why you think what was wrong, and could they've avoided the harm, and can money fix it, right? It's kind of the sorry question.
Right. I mean, my question immediately on listening to this is how could that have been avoided? It never
Yes.
floods in Denver or in Colorado. Yeah.
Right. I'm like, who, act of God, all the things, right? Shit
Yeah.
happens,
Who could have
act of
seen this? Yeah.
God. Who could
Hmm.
see this coming? So she's like, oh no. She's like, let me tell you, the way flooding normally happens is it's not because you get a ton of rain and then the front yard fills up. She's like, water has to go somewhere. She goes, that's the whole point of like land development and planning. And They knew it from the beginning when they built this development. Water has to go somewhere because there's a 500-acre farm behind the subdivision. It's enormous. She's like, I guarantee you, just based on what happened, like something's happened there. So she had looked into.
They didn't plan for where the water would go. Got
So
it.
so she says, listen, my whole theory is there is something wrong with the design and the execution of whatever they were supposed to do with the drainage and where the water's supposed to go. And I'm like, okay. So she did a ton of work. She got all the plans that were publicly filed. And I mean, I learned so much too about like how this process works. So it was also kind of fun. But she then hired a very brilliant expert in Colorado who does water engineering and hydrology. This guy teaches also, and that's really what sold me on the case, because he walked me through in about 15 minutes really basic things about this is how development works. Like, your biggest concern is where the water has to go back to the river. In Colorado, we have Western water rights. So he's like, if water's not seeping back into where it was supposed to go originally, you got a problem. Like, people have water rights. So part of planning your development is, how do I get this water that normally falls back into this river? I mean,
This
that's kind
sounds
of
like teaching section.
Yeah,
This sounds like teaching
beautiful.
section. Here's how you do this correctly when creating a development.
Yep.
Did you put that in your teaching section?
Absolutely. So he had this really beautiful, like everyone understands in Colorado, we're a dry state. You need to get water back to where it's got to go, because people use it. And in this community, they understand it because they deal with irrigation and farming. So it's very familiar with, of course, the water's got to go back to where it's got to go. And then from that conversation, he also did such a great job of explaining, like, here are all the ways that we divert water. I didn't know. Streets, sidewalks, gutters, like, those are things that divert water. So it just was such a beautiful kind of like situation where he just sort of opened the door to very simplistic understanding how this was supposed to work and where the water should have gone, and pointed out, listen, I can show you on the plans what happened. And the minute I could see it in real time, I was like, I see what happened. They were supposed to do one design, they switch it for another design, and it's essentially, they switched the whole design from this complex channel system. It was supposed to be a really wide, like 16 to 25 feet wide of a channel to divert water, was replaced with literally a mound or hump of dirt that was 2 feet high.
Okay,
So
so immediately my mind goes to motive. Like, so why did they do that?
yeah, I wonder. And this development was
Could one be
completed.
cheaper? A
Yeah, I mean,
mound
it could have been.
versus a complex. I mean,
The other thing too is the development is done, in about 2008. So it's like the market's crashed. Houses are not selling. Definitely that farm property is likely not going to develop. So you have all these other elements happening. And, my clients are these innocent purchasers. They come and buy their home. They think this is our forever home till, they're in their 80s now, and it's their forever home. And that was the thing is, why would you ever think your home was in danger of flooding? It's just not a thought that crosses your mind. So she put all these things together. I step in the discovery phase, and once the expert disclosures were made and once the depositions were completed, it was very clear. Now we have a story and a picture here that we understand what happened on the developer side. We understand what happened when my clients purchased the property and what they expected. And then we have the disaster.
So let's talk about that. What were the damages? Like, how much damage was done to the house? Was it just the basement? Was it foundation? Was it yard? Like, what were the actual damages and the amounts?
So they had about 7 feet of water in their basement, and they had no water, thankfully, in the upper floor. So the good thing is they could stay in the home while it was being remediated. It was, my client, he was like, listen, I ended up spending at least, $300,000 on the total amounts of the repair. He had receipts for something less because he just didn't think of keeping it all together with everything going on. But here was the beautiful thing. Even on something as mundane as economic damages, like, what are all the things you did to repair the basement, right? They had a neighbor, get this, the neighbors like were there when this happens, and the clients are home. And they're like, oh my God, our neighbors, people come to check on them. And they're like, help us, like our basement's flooding. There's all this water. It's scary, the sound. all of the neighbors come together. A guy who works in the oil field has like a sump pump, like an industrial size sump pump that's portable that he pulls from home, parks it in front of their house, and sucks all that water out in a couple hours. Like the
Community is
neighbors
alive and
come
well.
to the
I
rescue.
love it. I love it. So why not just, file an insurance claim? Why do we have to go to trial and do
So
this?
in Colorado, there's no flood insurance. So if
Mm,
your home is
mm,
damaged from flood water, as opposed to like if a pipe bursts and your home floods from a
right.
broken pipe, that's a covered claim.
Hmm.
But we don't have FEMA zones. There's a very few FEMA zones that people even build in the Boulder area. But yeah, home insurance does not cover this. So this is directly all out of their pocket. This is the goodwill of the neighbors coming in to help them. And this is a man and his wife who spent about a year and a half working with neighbors and contractors, putting their house back together out of their own pocket.
Major disrupt for sure. How are they defending this? What are they saying?
So they had a couple theories. The first one is kind of more of a legal technical argument that, listen, this is a statute of limitations issue. This development was done in 2008. You're just SOL on the time. So they had very technical legal arguments on that side. As far as the water and like where it came from and this, that, and the other argument they had was, well, the house next door, like the lot next door to them, did not get sold and built until 2016. So much later. And before, even our water engineer was like, water would come and it would kind of flow through that lot and there would be no flooding because most of the water ran through the vacant lot next door. So you didn't have this problem. But once the house is built, you have a much narrower lot now. And so
Mhm.
their theory was, oh, they built up the house too high. There was all the downspouts, everything was like kind of slanted toward my client's house. So it was really their fault that all the water's coming into their house. We were able to really address that head on with our engineer, who is like, the bottom line is the volume of water that's coming toward those houses. That's what was supposed to be controlled by proper drainage.
Well,
And
and then I'm
so,
assuming the other things on your fears list would be the things we started with, right? That
mhm.
jurors would think act of God, we never have flooding. Are there other fears that you had to overcome besides the defenses that they were putting up?
Right. I had created, I don't know if I brought my cards. I did not. So I use index cards all the time. And I okay, here's one of my fears. So I put my fears on a card and it says it's the neighbor's fault and the builder, not our fault. And then on the back
Mhm.
I put, okay, how do I respond to that? Um, but for the failure of the drainage burn, the runoff from the acreage off site, all of that water would not have drained between the houses. It would have been a fraction of that amount if there
So
was.
I just want to stop for a minute and just remind our listeners that Anna is working the H2H voir dire process, which is have a fear, write out all your fears. She does them on index cards, which I think is brilliant. And then ask yourself, what would a juror have to believe to negate or nullify this fear, which is what's on the back of your card. I love that. Now, just for time, let's go to voir dire for a sec. I know there in Colorado, you get what, 2 minutes? No, I think it's like 20 minutes. Was that true in your
Average.
case as well?
Yeah,
Yeah,
so we
average.
got 20 minutes apiece, and that's very average in Colorado, unfortunately.
Yep. Yeah.
I know a lot of people fight it. I'm of the opinion, listen, I had a great conversation with some lawyers and law students like 2 days or 3 days before trial. I went to like a soiree to celebrate a friend who she has her own firm and she does like a I'm the greatest lawyer in the world party every year, and it's awesome. Like everyone comes because they're
Hmm.
like, duh, yes, you are.
I love
And
that.
it was so fun because I wasn't going to go, but I was like, I need to just kind of turn my brain off. And
Hmm.
the good thing is I was able to talk to people about the case, and people kept asking like, oh my God, what can you do in 20 minutes? So I was talking about your book and I was like, listen, here's what I'm doing. I am thinking about all the things my jurors are doing today to prepare to show up for me on Monday. I have
Hmm.
people who are rearranging childcare so that someone's driving their kid to school. I probably have someone on my jury who had a doctor appointment that had to cancel and reschedule. I definitely have some people that have had to call off work and people depended on them to show up that day and someone's covering their shift.
Hmm.
So part of my prep work is thinking about all the things the jurors did to come and help me to be on this
Love
jury.
it.
And
I
that's what's
love it.
helping me prepare, is because then I can step into this 20 minutes having gratitude for them being there instead of fear, because it's like,
Well,
I
that's
don't want to go in
mindset
there.
right there. That's mindset, right? You're
Mhm.
preparing your own mindset of putting yourself in their shoes before you lay it on them. So what did you voir dire on then?
So I had a whole voir dire plan with all the things. The good thing about doing that is I got through the design, my designed
Mhm.
alliance, which I thought was important. I had people
Did you
say,
get objected to, or did the judge shut you down?
no.
I always ask that because everyone is always freaked out about that. Oh my God, and everybody on my podcast go, no, it was fine.
Yeah, I think that
Well,
even the defense was just sort of like, oh, okay. Like they kind of had some buy-in when they did their voir dire. It was very, it was like, well, Ms. Martinez already covered blah, 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 So it was
yeah,
really funny because he just kind of referred back to my questions.
yeah.
But I did design alliance. What I focused on was, remember you had done a podcast a while ago and you were talking about how sometimes defense points get in our funnels. And I was thinking
Mhm.
about my funnels, and one of the things you all did was to say, instead of first asking about my fears, why don't I start asking, why did I take the case? And identify
Mm,
those reasons. And that's how I started with my funnels. So one
yeah.
of the things that I said is, well, like, what would sorry say? What do you want to know from the jurors, Anna? So I thought,
Mhm.
oh, I know what I want to know. I want to know how many jurors here um, like help people. Why is that important to help
Mhm.
people? Why would you want to help
Mhm.
people? That's like just, out of the goodness
Mhm.
of your heart. Like basically, do you want to protect people and help them? Is that your spirit? Is that your heart? And I want to find those people and put them on my jury. So what
I
I
love
asked
it.
is, has anybody ever been displaced by a flood, hurricane, or disaster? Or have you helped someone who has? Literally, like everyone's hand went up. Everybody in the box.
Oh
They
my
had
goodness.
fascinating stories. I had a guy, this IT tech guy, who just looks super like, most people would never pick this guy. Tell this incredible story how he's like, well, I like volunteered with a group of people and I went to help hurricane victims. We painted houses. Another guy who was in the same boat was like a tech guy and was just like, yeah, my church, we got together and we helped people after Hurricane Harvey. So many people were affected by hurricanes, like their family members in Texas and Florida, and they all talked about, I helped my grandma, I helped neighbors. We sent several trips down there to like just help people. And I was like,
Mm,
there you go. That
love it.
that that's the connection is, and then I was able to put them in conversation with each other, right? You heard so and
Yes.
so talk about, how they had gone and why this was important. Can you tell me why it was important to house your brother after this? Like why was that meaningful for you? And
Yeah.
it was so cool because some of these things that we talk about and think about, like once you get people agreeing like on a principle or on the idea that like it's a good thing to help people and it makes you feel good, um,
Mhm.
that's the mindset you're creating, where it doesn't even have to be about your case. It's just like, why are we all here? And
I
we
just
want you
that's
to
what I
help.
think is so brilliant about it. And you are brilliant. And I knew that the minute I met you, but that's the primarily the big thing that they're there to do. And so I love what you did with that. It's very similar to like getting danger in the air, right? It's like sometimes we'll ask a question that we don't really care about the answer. We just wanted the danger in the air, right? Who's ever shared the road with a semi truck? What was that like? Right. And we're not really trying to go anywhere, just being like, that's scary. And it sounds very
Right,
similar, like how important is helping people. Right. I want that in the air in a case like this. And probably in most of our cases. I love
right.
that. I'm not going to steal that. I will credit you, of course. So did you feel good with the jury that you ended up with?
Yeah, I didn't get to any of the money or responsibility questions. I did make sure that I had a sticky note that said, ask the jurors if they want to serve or they want to go home, because I did promise.
Right.
So I did. I said, I just have one more question. If anybody thinks this is not a case for me, I don't think I could be on this jury, let me know, please. And I did my hand raised. Everyone said, I want to serve. They all looked around and they were like, I'm okay. Not a single person
Excellent.
tried to get out.
In 20 minutes. In 20 minutes.
Yeah.
That's unbelievable. And you didn't like use the whole time to go after cause challenges and do all the things,
No,
right?
I mean,
Such
no.
a waste of time. Yeah.
No, and I think
So
cost challenges are just also something that's it really, those people out themselves, they'll usually say, I have all these issues or
absolutely.
problems and like I can't serve, and they
Mm-hmm.
make excuses. So I'm like, the judge is going to let them out anyway. You don't even need to
Yep.
really, the judge doesn't want
Yep.
people who don't want to be there either.
That's right. That's right. So was there an offer in this case?
There was a formally filed offer, so it's not confidential. It was $75,000 was the formal offer.
Okay. So before we reveal what you got on this, okay, let's talk about opening. How did that go?
Great. I did follow the pattern that we use in H2H, and it took me, the good thing is, this is a plug for motions practice and sometimes why it is important. I had to like defend summary judgment motion, all these motions. But the good thing is it helped me really refine how could the danger have been eliminated, avoided, or how could you have warned against the danger? And those are the three things I focused the whole case on because there's an answer to each of those questions. So it was
Got it.
very easy to put my opening together because everything revolved around these three things that I had like actual facts and evidence to support. Like this whole thing could have been avoided if the original design was built. This whole thing, you could have minimized the danger by like, even if you built not the original design, you could have like employed a maintenance plan to like make sure this dirt berm like lasted over time. And then at the very least, you could have just warned the homeowner and said, we didn't have a maintenance plan in place and this thing like probably washed away. So I think it would be a good idea to take steps to, raise your window wells or like build up, dirt behind the home to divert water, whatever. Like those are three things that were
There's our safety triangle, right?
Yes,
Yep.
yes.
Eliminate it, mitigate it, warn. I love it. I love it. I love it. And so how long was the trial?
It ended up, let's see, started on a Monday and we got to verdict on Thursday. So it was a 4-day trial.
Love it. Coach
Probably
Jody
could
will
have
love
been.
that.
Yeah, I was trying to do it in 3, to be honest, because I am a strong believer in shorter is better. I do love the idea that length is fear and brevity is confidence. I'm a strong believer in
Yes.
that. Having
So you
done
listen to that confidence, or you listen to that podcast. Yeah, I
yes,
love that. Yeah, it's not that short is what we are going after, it's clarity. And when you're clear, short is the result, right? It's not like let's just make this short. It's let's get so clear on what our case is that we don't need to have it drag on for weeks and weeks and
because
weeks.
you can
Okay.
say it once and literally the juror heard you.
Yep.
And not having to repeat it a million times with 10 witnesses. This is why
That's
judges
right.
hate cumulative evidence, where they're just like, why am
Yep.
I having this witness say this when someone else already said it? And the
That's right.
lawyers are skeptical about that. But I'm like, no, you're right. We don't need that additional person because someone already said that.
Well, it go back to fear, right? I
Yeah.
want to make sure that I really nail this, what it's doing the opposite. What was your ask in the case? What'd you ask the jury for?
So I asked the jury to give the full compensation for what we could show receipts for. So we used the neighbor. He was also a contractor and he did all the work at like a discount. And what I had him do is I had him go through his bills and I said, listen, some of the stuff that's itemized in here is like additional stuff that wasn't original to the home. And I said, take that out. So he did this really good job of like, yeah, I added a bathroom in this. So like we adjusted actually what the document said. So it was $140,000 for the economic damages. And I used the triple C damages house.
Damages house. Oh, from Christy Crowe Childers. I just podcast with her last week. I love it. I love it. I love it.
It was her damages house was great because it was a case about a house. So the cool thing is in my closing, I was able to put the foundation of the house is the basement. And I said, this is where the $140,000 goes. I said, but let's talk about the rooms upstairs where the clients now live. We had a jury instruction that has 4 elements for non-economics. So that include impairment of the quality of life. It included mental pain and suffering, emotional stress, and inconvenience. So I made the biggest room in the house the impairment of the quality of life piece because as an elderly couple, one of the challenges they faced is like she was so fearful of staying in the house that this could happen again. They were like, we have to sell the house and leave. So let's repair it and then let's sell it because you're not getting rest here, literally. So they sold the house. And the tricky part is they had moved for a little while, but she hated where they were. So she like packed her Subaru and was like, I'm going back to Colorado. And her husband was stayed behind to try to sell the house. And so it actually resulted in this really terrible situation where they had to live apart. So to me, the whole case was like about the personal injury, like the non-economic damages is the
Absolutely.
So we asked in for each of our rooms, we basically had a total of 600,000 for the non-economic damages to be shared between the two plaintiffs. So the total ask was $600 for the non-economics and the $140 for the economic damages.
So 740.
Yes.
And they had offered 75,000?
Correct.
Okay. And what was the actual verdict?
$890,000.
So they brought back more than you asked. Were you able to talk to them about why, or if not, what are your thoughts on why?
I did speak to the jurors afterwards, and mainly my clients wanted to meet them and just tell them thank you for being on our jury. So they were so cute. We all waited outside, and I just said, could you tell us what this was like for you being on this jury? What were some of the important things for you? And all of them said, they referenced back to voir dire, where they said, all of us have been in these situations where we've helped people and we understood how devastating it is to have like part of your house has been ruined and wrecked. And you're doing what you can to minimize or mitigate your damages, staying in your home while repairing it, and how life altering it is to lose your family photos, like lose all these things. And everyone kept going back to this original conversation in voir dire.
Yes.
And they
That's
had
so
this
important.
experience that they could talk about. And for them, they were like, what we heard was very compelling because they had literally seen family members and people they know go through that. And I think that was what was meaningful, is making that connection. Again, it's connection. It's like, these are people who don't know each other. We had a woman who was a PhD. We had a guy who was a retired oil field worker, right? These are things they had in common, is these are people who
Yes.
care about people, and they cared about our clients.
So why the 150K bump? Were they just like,
They
you know
just said
what?
they thought that it wasn't enough.
I just love that. I just love that.
Yeah.
75K offer, 740K ask, an $890,000 verdict. That was incredible. We were so cheering you on, and to hear that at the end was just amazing. So what was your big learning, either from H2H being a part of this or the trial itself, that you would share with other trial lawyers?
What you spend time on is what's important.
You make
So,
important.
yeah, what you make important, yeah. And that was very key for me, because when I would get distracted by the crazy technical legal arguments, I had to keep reminding myself, those are defense points. Jurors don't think technically about defenses. Lawyers do. And what they're worried about, the jurors, are just like, how did this play out? Like, I understand the story as the juror. I don't, the legal arguments are dumb. And so what I try to just constantly refocus on is, okay, they've said this crazy thing. I have to just refocus it back on, what is my story that I'm trying to tell? Why was this wrong? How could it have been avoided? And what can money do? I mean, those were just the constant refrains I had to have to calm myself down in trial, to be like, don't take the bait and get into this wild, crazy rabbit hole of a defense, because then the jurors will think there's something there, and there really wasn't.
Right, right. The more attention you give to it, the more you make it important. And you are now in our mindset mastery class. So I'm sure you're learning way more mindset things there. You already sound like such a mindset master. I'm just so thrilled for you. I'm so excited. I'm sure your clients were absolutely dumbfounded by this result.
Yeah, I think what's really wonderful about having clients with you, even in a scary moment, we had to wait for a verdict, and normally I have never eaten through trial. I just can't, because my stomach and my nerves are bad. It's like the first time in my life, my whole lawyer life, I ate after the case was over, and I was like, I'm hungry. And we ate and waited for a verdict. And I felt just so different, because I knew, even if this doesn't turn out the way we want it to, we got people to care and pay attention. My clients felt taken care of, and I felt like I took care of them. And that's why I'm here, is I wanted to show them that.
The verdict is the juror's job.
Yeah. And for once I let it go, that was really helpful for me. And I also, I know you always say, trust the jury. The other thing I really felt was helpful is, in the preparation to the trial, thinking about them, I also thought about them. I try to make it very intentional. what did my jury hear today? So that I didn't repeat myself the next day.
I love that.
And just tell myself, okay, they already heard this, this, and this. They're gonna, that's good. I could move on from that and just make sure everything I said mattered. I try to think of it like a movie script, or when you watch a television show. I watch a lot of Grey's Anatomy, but the reason I like it is Shonda Rhimes is a really brilliant screenwriter, because she has a thing where she says, you can act however you want, but you have to say every word that I write because it matters. And the more I watched it and I hear the dialogue, you get really intense emotion in 2 or 3 minute segments of people. It's never more than 3 minutes. And there's very little dialogue that even happens sometimes. And I think it's really instructive that I don't need to have a laundry list or beat a point to death if you are patient with the point and talk about it and let the person reflect on it to give you the answer, because that's what's
So you're
creating
talking
resonance.
about some nonverbal marking there too, some pausing and voice tone. Because I just think about if I say to Kevin, "Don't forget to pick up Elena today," and then I'm like, "Don't forget to pick up Elena today," and 2 hours later, "Don't forget to pick up Elena today," he's going to think, "You don't think I'm going to pick up Elena today." And so when we're consistently reminding our jurors, this is important, they're going to be like, "You obviously think we don't think it's important. Maybe it isn't important. Why would she think that?" Versus, this is just the truth. And I know you know it, and I know it, and it's important to help people, and this was wrong, and bye-bye. By the way, I don't know if you're a documentary person, but Anatomy of Lies, about the writer for Grey's Anatomy who made up cancer and a bunch of other shit and got found out. You got to go watch Anatomy of Lies.
I didn't know there's a documentary. I read the articles.
Okay. Yes. In Vanity Fair. Yes, I did too. Okay. Yeah. Well, Anna, my dear friend, and you're just magic. You are magic. I knew it the minute I met you. And it's always fun when the jury reflects that. They don't always, like you said, you had a loss after this, but thank you so much for being in our lives, in the crew. And I'm just so grateful for you and that you are in this world making the change that you're making. Thank you for being here.
Well, thank you. And for sharing what you have seen that's hard for us lawyers to see, that we can have connection with people, and it is scary, and it's okay to feel scared, but they're not scary people. They're just everyday people that are there to do the right thing.
That's right. Thank you so much. And we'll talk to everybody next week. Have you ever wished that you knew what the jury was thinking? Well, grab a pen and paper, because I'm about to give you instant access to a free training I created for plaintiff trial attorneys called 3 Powerful Strategies to Help You Read a Juror's Mind. It's going to help you to understand what the jury is thinking, so you'll feel confident to trust them and yourself in the courtroom. Ready for the address? Go to sorryswears.com/jury. Enjoy.